Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and seasonal greetings to you all for Christmas 2023. Welcome to Energy Speaks Back, powered by B2B Energy. My name is Paul Webb. I'm the founder of B2B Energy, and I'm your Merry Christmas host. Weekly, I present to you energy experts from around the world. Welcome to this holly episode of 134. And our purpose, as always, is to provide a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today for us to deliver savings that impact on our planet for this festive period. We would like to thank utility people who are creating a better understanding and future for people in our industry, and Esther Energy, who are our certificate partners. Welcome, energy enthusiasts, and grab your favourite holiday treat, get snug, and let's unwrap the energy-filled conversation with the Christmas guest. 'Tis the season for energy wisdom and holiday joy. Our featured guest today discusses his time at the British Research Establishment, the BRE, working on energy best practices and government programs across the UK. So without any further ado, let's dive into this conversation with Father Christmas himself, Noel Burns. Good morning, Noel. How are you today?
I'm very well, Paul. Thank you for inviting me to speak on your podcast.
Brilliant. And it's Christmas. Not quite
Yes,
Christmas,
indeed.
but we're nearly Christmas.
Well, Christmas is very special for anybody named Noel.
Yes. And I wonder why I've asked you to come on my podcast.
Yeah, yes, I have I think my suspicions are being confirmed that this is the Christmas podcast.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So, no, we've met through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And we've got some various different people that we network with as well within our industry. So I know a bit about you, and we've had a meeting offline as such. So for the benefit of the audience today, can you give us some background to yourself and your origin story?
Yeah, well, my name is Noel Burns. My background is building mechanical and electrical services design. And I've been involved in energy management, stroke environmental management for over 25 years in some shape or form, be it energy audits, research, and more laterally, training and communications is a larger part of what I do now. So when I qualified, it was the early 90s. There was very little work for engineers or anybody in the building trade.
Right.
So I took the boat to the UK and I worked on the buildings for a number of months, and I bought myself a magazine, a building construction magazine. And in the back of that, it had a directory of every construction related company in the UK. And I started sending in my CVs,
Right.
my CV. And I got as far as B, and I sent it into the Building Research Establishment. They were recruiting at that moment, and I went in there as a scientific officer in 1994. And I was there for 10 years. And that really was where I developed my interest in energy efficiency and energy management. So, in those days, it was letters. Now I think you need about 5 different AI platforms to tune your CV. You don't even recognize yourself when you come out the far end of those things. Yeah, but that was very old school, and that's the way it was done then. And as I said, I had a great tenure at the BRE. They were doing really interesting stuff. It was just at the tail end of developing benchmarks for buildings.
Right.
So this was the energy efficiency best practice program, and this was led by a gentleman from the Department of Environment in Marsham Street in London, David Vincent, and this was a huge undertaking, to benchmark buildings, all different types, and that from that work, it's never been done since, probably because the expense of the audits at that scale, and that fed in then to CIBSE, Chartered Institution of Building Services Engineers, into their technical Memorandum 46, which is the building benchmarks we all know and use today. And those benchmarks are probably on the cusp of 20 years old now.
Yeah.
So it was quite a visionary work at the time.
I still refer back to that's SkyDef, isn't it?
Sorry, yes. GuideF is the energy efficiency guide, and then the TM46 is
is part
Just
of it, isn't it?
section on benchmarks, yes,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
benchmarks for buildings. Yeah. So there's still day-to-day bread and butter calculations for auditors.
yeah.
Yeah.
And as you say,
Yes.
it's that I know Sibsy were trying to bring that more in line, wasn't they? They did do a lot of work on that, developing some software, but I don't know what the outcome of that has been. I know it's been very difficult because technology has been moving very fast. We've got solar has been introduced since then. We've got LED lighting, which made a massive difference to that benchmark, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, things are moving at a pace. I mean, you know, we don't even 20 years from now talk about not having the answers. We don't even know what the questions are going to be.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, so I think education is a key thing. And David Vincent, that gentleman I mentioned, he always said the best practice program was the bridge across which knowledge moved from the haves to the have-nots. And
yeah.
I don't think it has been summed up in a better way
No, I
that I've
totally
heard in
agree.
any case.
I totally
So
agree
if
because
we, yeah, so we can give people the skills to come up with the solutions. They'll find the answers. So I'm very hopeful.
the BRE, what a great apprenticeship into this industry because I've been to the BRE. They used to have like bungalows there and buildings there, replicating say boiler systems and things that you could test your own systems on. It's quite an
Yep, and
amazing place, wasn't it?
yeah, they had a lighting lab. My favorite building in there was the anechoic chamber, and
Right.
this is a chamber where there is no reflection of sound. So you go in there, you're standing on a metal grid, acoustic attenuation on every surface, and it's very eerie to hear your own heart beating and
Wow.
almost the blood pumping through your veins. So that was an experience. And of course, they have uh, some of you may have seen the movie The Dam Busters.
Hmm.
They have a model of the Moan Dam in a copse on the site, and that's where they started to see what sort of level of uh, explosive they needed to blow up that dam. So there's a scale model of the dam there. Yeah, so loads of history in there. As I said, I had 10 very enjoyable years in there. I was lucky; I had very good managers, and that's such a huge important thing in your career. You know, if you have good people to guide you, and
Yeah.
I had some wonderful people in there that were, my directors, and I enjoyed it very much.
So where did you go from there?
Well, my wife is a teacher, and teachers, like engineers, I suppose, they have a passport to travel. And literally on my 10th anniversary of working at the BRE, my wife got a position in the Turks and Caicos Islands, which are beside the Bahamas in the Caribbean. And we went there for a number of years where I sort of reskilled at that stage because I got a job with a construction advisory company as so it was a chartered surveying practice. And so I got a lot of skills there in terms of financing buildings, um, cost control, signing off projects. So again, I was very lucky. Russell Orwell in there in construction advisory services was my boss, and he was. We did a lot of work for the public sector in there as well. Atkins had won a contract, Department of Overseas Development, to do life cycle costing on every building of the public estate there. From that, then we did that. That was nearly 1.5 years work. So we were looking at roads, infrastructure, buildings, and from that, then we developed a maintenance manual and life cycle costing for the assets. So that was really interesting work as well as all the sort of development stuff that was going on with condos and high-rise developments
Yeah,
and
yeah.
green tourism and ecotourism. So that was all bubbling along in the background as well. So I enjoyed that.
So there's still the overlap area to focus on regarding energy, yeah?
Yes, and the development of some of the islands, the infrastructure that was required,
Mm,
water treatment. There was no fresh water,
right.
so all had to be desalined. There was desalination plants, um, electricity generation, all the diesel generators in those days. Now moving gladly over to solar uh, energy, so that's a good thing. Um, so that was probably one of the most enjoyable couple of years
I
in
can
my
imagine.
career was there.
Can
Yeah, yeah,
imagine.
yeah. But then you sort of outgrow it as well a little bit. And, it's a small island. And, the timing was right then to move on, I think. And
Yeah.
you keep have to sort of a change is good.
And then where did you come back,
Yeah, well,
or did you
as I
keep on
said,
traveling?
no, we traveled. I worked in the Philippines
Oh, wow.
for a couple of years. Again, my wife from Birmingham was working in the British school in Manila. And then I started working for the company I'm working for now, doing some research and writing technical documents. And so the time difference was great because it would arrive on Brian's desk at 5 in the evening. I'd work on it over his night, my daytime, and he had all the answers ready to go at 9 o'clock the next
Yeah,
morning.
yeah.
And I see a lot of consultancies are doing that. They're a lot of the drawing work and the CAD designs and that are being worked on overnight, and they're fresh then the next morning.
Yeah. That's why I'm in Thailand at the moment, and I really like it because I can wake up in the morning, have a whole complete day. It's 4 o'clock now. I'm starting my day, and you're
Yes.
just, I'm finishing my day, but I'm
Yeah.
starting my day. It's
Yes.
great. I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
enjoyed that
Yeah.
way of life, and I can see how that was appealing.
Yeah. And I mean, well, Thailand is a lot more developed in terms of tourism as well than Manila and the Philippines, but that's coming too. And
Yeah,
in Thailand, you buy a ticket in a shop on the street. That ticket will get you a bus. It'll
yeah,
get you a train. It may even get you a ferry. And the infrastructure just wasn't there in the Philippines. I presume. Well, that's a number of years ago now. It's developed more, but
yeah.
certainly uh,
I've actually been
Thailand.
to the Philippines,
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful country made up of
it
many
is. Yeah.
islands, but it isn't as easy to get around as it is in,
No.
in
No.
Thailand.
Yeah. Yeah. So we did some work there uh, on sort of promoting the tourism aspect of it, and I think eventually the website was bought by the Department of Tourism. That
Right.
was after I had left, so that was interesting as well because I'm an outdoorsy type of person. I love being outdoors, not in a sort of Bear Grylls survival mode
Yeah, yeah.
way, but more a gentle meandering. But I like being outdoors, and these countries are great to travel through.
So you've gone
So
from
much to
one
see.
side of the world to the next side. Are we easing our way back, or we still
Yes, and
traveling?
yeah, yeah. Well, on that stage, and then the we wanted to be closer to family,
Mm,
so we came back to Europe then after that stint, and we've
brilliant.
been I've been lucky. I've been we have. Well, I mentioned it's important to have good boss. I've had very good clients as well, and that's
Right.
very important. Um,
So
so
you
we
self-employed now?
yeah. Well, there's a couple of us, and we can pull in some colleagues then from the more technical stuff. Myself and Brian mostly these days we do training, and we set up this program called the Green Teams National Program, originally funded by the EPA, and they sort of prime the pump. Now it's a commercial product, and we've gone into over 60 organizations, and it's been very successful.
Tell us
And
more
the
about the
whole
green teams.
Yeah, well, the reason it sort of came about is, well, John Mulholland. I met John Mulholland when I was at BRE many, many years ago, and he was the first person to really see um, the people aspects of energy management and to promote this communication side of it. Because, before it was all technical, and now I know energy management is really like a three-legged bar stool. So you have the process, that's, the standard operating procedures, the checklists, policies. And then you have the people. So that's all staff engagement. And then you have the projects, the typical technical projects. And
Mm,
that's where engineers are most comfortable, in that sort of area.
yeah, yeah.
But I learned the hard way. If you don't tackle those other two areas, and John was quick off the mark on this one, your energy management program is going to fall over.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot of work sort of trying to combine all these areas into our training. And this Green Teams program, what we were finding from our own research was, we're talking about resource management, but the greatest resource is time.
Mm,
And here we have organizations who are setting up these teams. They were losing, they get the sort of the low hanging fruit, and then they'd lose focus. They weren't getting the support from management. So even though they were like, almost little pockets of excellence in organizations, they weren't joined up to aligning themselves with the core values of the organization. So we developed this program then to set them up on a professional basis, if you like. We bring them through a process. William Deming, who developed this Plan, Do, Check, Act.
Yeah.
The Deming Circle that we use is the basis of all ISO standards. He once said, if you don't know where you are in the process, you don't know what you're doing. So anything we do in our training, it's always systemized. And that way, people will never lose their way. They always know where they are. They always know what they've done and what they need to do next. And the resource management, the savings, the environmental improvements, they will fall out naturally. They just have to stick to a systemized approach across the organization. So that was the main reason we set up the Green Peaks program. And the other one is because people need to be upskilled. We've been asked to do more and more in organizations in terms of climate action, energy management, energy efficiency. But the training hasn't sort of kept up. And that was one of the things we're finding. There's a huge demand now for upskilling staff, green champions, energy champions within organizations to sort of drive leadership and inspire others within their organizations.
Yeah. It's like, so when going back, say, to the early 20s, where, ESOS was coming about, say, or there was a legislation, or there's something we had to do regarding energy management, whoever wasn't looking at the managing director at the time within that board meeting, he would get tagged. Okay, you're not concentrating. You're going to be doing energy management going forward. You're right there. There was no training. It was whoever wasn't concentrating in the meeting or who was ever bold enough to take that project on. And it was normally fell to the health and safety person who already had policies in place that he was trying to implement. And he was probably the best person because it was probably likely that he didn't have enough work to do all that. So he needed other stuff on his plate. But nowadays, it's a little bit more involved in that now, isn't it? ESOS is a legislation that has to be delivered. It's all about compliance now, isn't it, regarding energy management?
Yeah, and I mean, this is I mean, as engineers, we need to sort of watch our language. MCBs, TRVs, COPs.
Oh, exactly.
They mean nothing to senior management or middle management.
Yeah.
So it's all about compliance, leadership, direction of travel, transparency, good environmental governance. They're the hooks for leadership for senior management. And when I say senior management, there is another layer within organizations, middle management. And I call them central management because they really are central to the environmental message. If they come on board, they are a really positive influence on your campaign. If they resist it, your campaign is going nowhere. So there is this layer, and the senior management have signed the policy. They think, everything is great in the organization. We have people on the front line who are creative, who are coming up with all the ideas for saving energy or water, waste, whatever it is. But we have this layer in the middle, and it's vital that any campaign addresses that middle layer. They can really hinder your program if they're not addressed in a systematic way.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time in the training looking at levers of how we get that sort of level involved.
Have you got a feel for the organisations, the percentage of organisations that are still not doing anything about this?
Well, if I can refer you to a study that was done by the Office of Public Works in Ireland. Now, they manage Ireland's largest buildings, the large hospitals, the police headquarters, the prisons. And they put in meters on 200 of their largest buildings. And what they found was quite shocking, really. 55% of electrical use was used outside occupied hours.
Wow.
Obviously, that doesn't apply to the hospitals, but the 9 to 5 offices. I mean, that is shocking.
Yeah.
It's shocking. And to think, Ireland imports, well, it was about 90% of its energy. It's now about 70% of our energy is imported. To waste it when it gets here in that sort of manner.
It's very expensive, isn't it? The energy in Ireland?
Yes, it is. I mean, we're seeing prices of almost 50 cents day rate, 42 cents night rate for some organizations.
Right.
And 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that would have been closer to 20 cents, 14 cents.
Mm.
So huge increase in price. Yeah. And that's a big driver as well, of course. Yeah. So
So
it's
what's the challenges to get those sort of people engaged? Are there challenges or is it just a matter of time for that?
well, there's always a pushback to facilities and say, well, isn't that your job as the facilities manager to manage the energy in the organization? And you sort of have to say, well, hang on a second. I'm trying to get clean air, clean
Hmm.
water. Um, I suppose on the wider environmental aspects, that's where you sort of pull them in. People that suffer from asthma, air quality is really important, and that comes about from burning fossil fuels.
Yeah.
So there are hooks in there we can use, and the HSE in Ireland, the Health Service Executive, they're aligning this climate crisis to a health crisis. They're looking at all the ailments that are coming from poor quality water, poor quality air, and they're developing strategy. So that's how you promote it. Not everybody's interested in saving the organization money. And one of the things that is important as well, the energy managers, the facility managers, they've been chipping away at these things for a long time, but they've never been brought into the sunshine or brought into the center. So one of the things we always do is it's important to sort of sit down as an energy manager. If people are listening to this, that they're obviously involved in energy in some way, write down the achievements of the organization and say, and the first reaction you get is, oh, we have no capital, I don't have senior management support, I don't have the time. I say, yeah, well, hang on a second. The lights came on automatically when I came into the corridor there. So someone's put in some lighting controls, and I say, oh yeah, they are LED. We did get LEDs last year. And then they start waiting.
Yeah.
And then 2 pages later, you have a full list of everything that organization has done. And I said, now, you take that page, you make a nice infographic, and you send that across the organization so that when they say it's a penny pinching exercise, this energy management thing, you can say, no, you can see here, the company has been investing in this for a long time. And, that's one of the ways around that sort of negativity in terms of energy management, that it's just a penny pinching exercise by management. And then the campaign isn't anything new. It's a new chapter. You're doing some staff engagement, and it's just a roll on of what the facilities people have been doing all along, but probably unnoticed.
Yeah. No, let's go back. And I know I do like to go back in time. Let's go back to your days at BRE. The building research establishment was their focus on energy management then? And what was the outcome? Was it about cost or was it about saving consumption? Because we really didn't climate change and things like that wasn't on our radar then, was it?
Yeah, well, I've been lucky enough. I've seen the fuel crisis in the late 70s.
Hmm.
So that was all about energy conservation.
Yeah.
That was the terminology used.
Yeah.
Then, of course, in the 90s, the buzzword was efficiency, business efficiency. And of course, energy got that title as well. So it was all about energy efficiency. And then it moved into, and the Carbon Trust in the UK they were the first ones really to go with the carbon,
Yeah. They
the
were.
way of carbon. So it then all became carbon management. I think emissions focused, if you like. So that's the timeline. But essentially, it's almost the same product. I mean, energy efficiency is still the low hanging fruit of climate action. There's so much work still to be done on buildings, and it's the simple things done consistently over time that produce results. And there's an old Chinese proverb that says, "Water hollows the stone, not by force, but by constant dripping." And that is a bit like energy management. Sometimes you have to be a bit of a drip, but you have to have
It's
the
the
consistency
consistency.
in the message, the consistency
Yeah.
over time period.
And I
So
can vouch for that
yeah,
because I've been working with organizations since 2016. And I remember going around and sort of saying, why are all these lights on? Why is all the plant running out of hours? Why is it all in hand? And I used to just get the shrugged shoulders, we're trying to, as you say, provide air quality, lighting, heating, we're trying to provide those for core areas, but
Yeah.
it was ended up running 24 hours a day. There was
Yeah.
just
Well,
lost control.
yeah.
But
Well, the
over
building
the,
services engineer, their role is you're juggling fire and ice. That's
exactly,
your role.
yeah,
You're heating and cooling and trying to make it
all
comfortable
the
for
time.
people. So
Yeah.
that's what you're doing.
And putting light on the situation. So, but what I've seen over that period of time, that dripping water has actually eventually, my consistency from 2016, 17, now I've even got, I work on with a group on a weekly basis. We're focusing on the energy significantly. And, you're right in what you'll say about the, do this list of all these things we have done. I could say to you, say 12 months ago, oh, I'm frustrated that we haven't done anything, but we had done a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
LED lights in two areas, one on some key areas. We've done the LEDs, we've done some heating projects. And when I start to look, I could have 2 pages very easily without even thinking. And now here we are today focusing on best practice.
Yeah.
You know?
So yeah, keep good records, and don't and people are very shy about promoting their achievements.
Yeah.
We need engineers now more than we've ever needed them. We need to grow energy management, climate action outside the plant room,
Mm.
right across organizations. And
Do you
the
think there's
engineer.
enough? Do you think there's enough engineers for us to go and deliver the savings that we need to provide to bring climate change down to a level?
Well, I think there's always going to be this specialist design engineers, so we need those, of course. And I suppose we're seeing it in design practices as well. So they're sort of taking a more holistic approach. So the services people are working closer with the architects,
Mm.
to get the passive design development. So that's encouraging. And then everyone is an energy. We're all energy managers in our own home,
Yeah, yeah,
and that doesn't change when we get into work. If we can bring that attitude into the workplace as well,
yeah.
and,
I think that's
people
key.
are
That's key.
and people are encouraged. They're recognised for what they're doing, and I mean that's one of the big reasons why green teams or energy teams they run out of steam after 12 to 18 months. No recognition from the organisation, not aligning themselves with the core values of the organisation, um, not promoting their achievements,
Mm.
not knowing how to measure their success. Do you really think if a green team or an energy team was making huge savings for an organisation, they'd be let fail?
No,
Or they'd be left drift away? They
no,
wouldn't.
no.
So we need to get a little bit clever in how we begin with the end in mind. How are we going to measure the success, and how are we going to prove it to management?
Mm.
That's a sort of change of mindset. But that's what they need to do.
You mentioned right in the beginning of this conversation about AI and new technology. How do you think new technology is coming and going to support us going forward?
Well, I think certainly metering is a huge area. Data visualization. It's very difficult to manage what people can see. So dashboards, different levels of metering and monitoring.
Hmm.
Uh, that there's going to be, I think, an explosion in that area, even on a citywide basis. Um, to think that in 2023 we're managing a climate crisis with homemade Excel spreadsheets. You know,
Yeah,
Excel spreadsheets that don't talk to each other, and there could be hundreds in a climate action plan for
yeah, yeah.
a local authority or something. So, we have to get clever. And, Excel spreadsheets are lazy. They don't tell you anything about communities, about the people. And it's the people we need to convince.
Mm.
And I'm reminded there was a poster they were cutting down some trees on a street in Dublin to make way for either a wider bus corridor. And there was a note on the tree, and it said, "Leave our trees alone. We don't live in transport corridors. We live in communities." And until we convince people that sustainability is all about a better lifestyle, we won't have any success. It's like I said, it's clean air. It's places that our kids can play safely on streets. They can go out and kick a ball. They can walk to school safely. These are the things that make a good life, and that's the message we need to get across. It's not all doom and gloom. And like you said, you're sitting, the one that's not paying attention at the meeting. Oh, you're in charge of energy management.
Yeah.
No, this is a great area to be involved in. It's an area full of change. Things are happening very fast, and it's a great time to be involved in energy management and environmental management, because the speed of change and the response required. We're really looking at whole organization responses.
And I think those figures you had earlier about 50% of their energy is used out of hours. I would say that that's pretty much everywhere I go as well. When I'm looking at new clients who engage me to do energy, and that's where all the low hanging fruit is. We can just bring that window to, realign it. So I like to do a review and then I realign, and realigning those times is the first thing we need to do. And I think I made a 30% saving on an organization's energy just by realigning. And what we're finding in especially in London, where staff only work the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they're off on a Monday, they're working from home. We've got a lot of home working now. Buildings are still operating as if it's a Monday to Friday. So there's lots of areas we can be focusing on to improve on that.
Yeah, and a lot of the time you get the argument, well, we have no budget. The money's already in your budget. Organizations are just spending it on wasted energy.
Exactly.
On a direct debit every month. It's there. They're
just
spending it.
Redirect that money
Exactly.
into doing the changes.
Absolutely.
And those changes aren't going to cost all the stuff we've been talking about, the green teams, etc. That doesn't cost a lot of money, because you're going to do the low hanging fruit. And then you're going to focus on, you're going to use the low hanging fruit energy savings to then
ring fenced it,
and then finance that to do your medium cost, and then finance those two lots of savings to then probably start introducing capex work, because that's going to be the stages.
And I've seen some situations where organizations have done exactly that, and they're using the maintenance budget. They're putting a little bit into investing in energy efficiency. Exactly. And over time, they were building up a really good investment pool or fund for the bigger projects.
Do you think the green team approach, what you're delivering here, that's a good starting point for net zero, isn't it?
I think net zero is a long horizon, and people can lose focus on exactly what they can do on a day-to-day basis, because that horizon is so far away. So I would like to think that people, be they energy champions, engineers, when they go in at 8 o'clock in the morning, they concentrate on what they can do that day to reduce energy. We have complicated the energy management message. It's very simple. Energy is power by the hour. And the secret of that formula is the multiplication symbol. Mm-hmm. So energy is power multiplied by time. Now, if we have a piece of equipment that is on for half the time, you're realigning that you're talking about, and it's 50%, and it uses half as much energy, so it's than the piece that was there, a half by a half is a quarter. So we can reduce our energy consumption by 75%. By the power of that equation, by looking at those two areas. And that's really the role of the energy manager: time and the rating of the piece of equipment. That's what we should not lose focus on that. We will get to net zero.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
So Noel, it's come to that time of the interview where I'd like to just put you on the spot and ask you whether there's anything you can give back to our industry and the people listening to the podcast today.
Yeah, well, it probably comes back to one of the points I said earlier. People listening to your podcast will have some interest in energy management, but to really grow it, you need to be speaking the language of senior management, middle management, So think about how you're going to sell that message within the organization, and what language are you going to use that will appeal to them and get them on board.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say.
And try not to introduce too many three-letter abbreviations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Keep it
Yeah.
simple,
Yes.
keep it concise as always, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So no, you're not going nowhere until you explain your name.
Okay.
Where does that come
Well,
from?
I presume it means Christmas. My name in Irish is Nolig, which is Irish for Christmas.
Right.
Noel is in Spanish is Christmas, and Papa Noel is Father Christmas.
Yeah.
So I like to think of myself as Father Christmas, just without the presents.
And without the beard, the
Yeah,
no
well,
white beard.
yeah. Well, we could. I'm missing a few other essentials. Yeah,
Was you born in December?
yeah. I was born in December in 1968. So that's a very important year for me. But it was also very important as well because in that year, actually in Christmas Eve 1968, the greatest environmental poster uh, was launched. Do you think you know what it is?
No.
It was Bill Anders from Apollo 8 took a picture, the full
Yes.
Earth picture of the full disk of Earth in color,
Yeah.
and that launched 1,000 environmental movements because for the first time we saw Earth really as a
For what it
living,
was.
breathing organism.
Yeah.
And when we look up, we see wonderful blue sky sometimes and the sun there, but in reality, from orbit, the sun is it's in a vacuum, it's in the black sky, and the thinness of the atmosphere, this veneer of gases that permit everything to grow, make it habitable for us to just keep dumping all this carbon dioxide, methane into this sliver of atmosphere. Uh, it's well, it's not good.
No.
It's when we're affecting. We're seeing climate change everywhere now. It's
Well,
um,
even today we've had earthquakes in China. We've had volcanoes erupting in Iceland. It's quite significant, isn't it? The flooding we've been seeing already in just today. We've seen that in the news. And I know the
yeah,
news and the press are publicizing this more and more, but it's still there, and we've got to do something about it. And people have got to stand up and listen to what's happening.
yeah.
What did you
And
just to go back on the COP? What do you think about the COP this year? Have you had any views on that?
well, I think everything is so interdependent. People have to come together to solve these. This is a global issue,
Mm,
and it's going to take a global solution. Uh, like coming back from space, we don't see national boundaries. Actually, the only things we can really see from space are physical boundaries and the marks of human industry on the surface.
yeah.
But anything that keeps people talking, keeps people engaged, keeps it in focus, that's a good thing. And we need to continue to do more and more of that.
And you was born when that photograph was taken, which is quite amazing.
Yeah,
You,
and I often, when I end a conversation or people says, "Oh, well, we can't do that," I say, "Well, it's 55 years since we put a man on the moon.
yeah.
Surely we can do this because that's my age, and I can very quickly, whenever I can throw that in at any time, and I have the exact date of the year. So that's a nice party trick.
Well, I was born in 64 and I remember that time very clearly, watching the moon landings. I don't remember 1968 with the going round, but
Mm,
I must have been sort of aware
yeah.
of it as such. But the moon landings for me were the big things. But in fact, I'm kicking myself because I read a book recently where someone said about that and taking that first picture.
Mm, yeah.
Because NASA had a
No.
problem taking that first picture. There was all sounds and there's all issues around in that. If you look
Okay.
into it,
Okay.
it wasn't a straightforward process.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when they took that photograph for the
Yeah,
first time.
yeah. Can you imagine growing up and looking up and seeing the moon in the sky every evening, and
Yeah,
then suddenly to look out the window and see the Earth in the sky?
I know.
I
Such
mean,
an amazing thing.
what an experience!
Yeah,
And if you read a little bit into it, all of the astronauts have come back changed a little bit, and they've
yeah,
become very pro-environmental uh,
yeah.
when they've come back because they see this uh, single Earth really that we all share.
Mm. No, it's been a real pleasure chatting to you, and I'd like to wish you and your family Merry Christmas at this
Thank you,
time, and please, you and your family stay safe in these times.
thank you, and just remember, Paul, Santa believes in you.